Mr. Peter McNeeley, thank you very much for coming on to TheBoxingBar.com, and welcome, my friend.
Anytime, my friend.
Day one, where were you born and raised?
Born and raised in Medfield, Massachusetts.
What was it like being raised in Medfield, Massachusetts?
A quiet, small little town west of Boston with white picket fence America. It was beautiful, a beautiful place to grow up, great school systems, good people. And then, later in life when I was in college and I started boxing, a lot of people in the community got behind me. But then when I turned pro, the Medfield town people got behind me. I'll never forget it.
And growing up, what were you like, Peter? What were you like as a kid growing up?
Well, I have two older brothers and one younger brother. So I kind of got stuck in that middle child class. And, I was feisty. My two older brothers would pick on me or razz me, and I'd fight back, And, years later, when they would interview my oldest brother, Tom, he would say, yeah, Peter would fight back, And of the four McNeeley boys, there are no coincidences. I was named after my dad's boxing manager, Peter Fuller. Peter Fuller was a famous guy here, a rich guy. Peter Fuller, Oldsmobile, Peter Fuller, Cadillac. I'm the third son, and I'm the third generation boxer. It was named after my dad's manager. So it was only fitting that I would be the only one in the family to carry on the family business, boxing.
What were you like in school? Were you a good student, bad student? What were you like?
Funny. I was, one thing I did do good, my attendance was always good. But I was not always a good student. I try to tell you kids today, I robbed myself of not doing my best in junior high school, and college. I did graduate from college. I'm very proud of that. I graduated from Bridgewater State College. Now it's Bridgewater State University in Bridgewater, Mass. I'm extremely proud of that. And when I do speak to young people today, I convey to them that I did not start amateur boxing till between my freshman and sophomore years of college. Brockton was right next door, the city of champions, Rocky Marciano, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. And after the famous Hagler-Leonard super fight, I had just started boxing. And I said, Dad, take me to the Petronelli gym in Brockton, where Hagler comes from, because my dad was friends with Marvin. And when me and my little brother were kids, Dad would take us to see Marvin train, and Marvin had us in his condo, and he would talk to us, and he was a great guy. So I wanted to be like my dad, and I wanted to be like Marvin. So every night, I was living in the dorms at the college. And every late afternoon, I would drive into the ghetto in Brockton. After that big fight with Leonard, you got a world champion in your gym. There's a bunch of other tough guys that want to ride the coattails of the champ to the top. And I'm driving up to the dorms at the college, and I'm fighting every one of them every night. I drive home to the dorms, my nose would be broken, I'm trying to blood in it, my head felt like a soccer ball, and I go into the dorm, my friends would come back from class from the library, and they go, Peter, how was your night? I'm like, great, how was the library?
And it's no secret. I mean, your father was a fighter himself, Tom McNeeley. Fought fighters like Oscar Bonavena and former heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson, even knocking down Floyd Patterson in their fight together. And ironically, Floyd Patterson and Mike Tyson were products of legendary trainer Cus D'Amato. And Mike Tyson, you fought later on yourself.
Exactly.
What did you think of your dad's accomplishments up to that point?
Number one, they did not focus on that in the promotion, but history repeated itself. Another Cus D'Amato protege fought another McNeeley.
What did you think of your dad's accomplishments in boxing? What did you think of him as a hero figure, as a father figure to you?
When I was about 7 years old, I crawled up in the attic. I found my dad on the cover of Sports Illustrated, the cover of Ring Magazine, his title fight programs. It was crazy. I just couldn't believe what I found out. And I would take him to school for show. And I fell in love with the boxing game at that moment. I could not get boxing out of my head. But the fact of the matter is where are you going to box? In little old Medfield. So I did not actually start competitive boxing till between my freshman and sophomore year of college. And, I got a little bit of a late start. And people do not know this. I only had 21 amateur fights. That's nothing. Like Mike Tyson had 150 amateur fights. Riddick Bowe had 225 amateur fights. Oscar De La Hoya had 350 amateur fights. So I only had 21 while going to college full time, working part time. I was young, I was strong, and I had the desire. But I try to tell young people these days, you can get your education. You can work. You can't go after your dream. You can't go after a dream job. That's the basis of my story. But as I dug in further, Dad was the real deal. When he fought Patterson for the title, they fought with 6-ounce gloves. A featherweight today doesn't even wear 6-ounce gloves, never mind a heavyweight.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they got away with that because it was out of the country. It was in Canada, the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. Now, a little trivia question for you. Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto, Boston Garden, and Madison Square Garden in New York were built for what? Boxing, wrestling, and the circus.
That's right. Before I became a boxing fan, I was a huge wrestling fan. They always had fights at the Maple Leaf Gardens. You're correct.
Yes. I hate it when I'm right. But Dad was the real deal. He fought 3 world champions. He fought a who's who of top 10 contenders. He sparred with the great Muhammad Ali twice in the gym when Muhammad Ali was Cassius Clay. And we're talking old school here. Old school. But, Dad was the real deal. And, Dad was always, I would say 95% of my 21 amateur fights and 54 pro fights, Dad was in my corner. But in my life, Dad was always in my corner.
And Peter, what was it like, if you could remember, because you were so young, 7 years old, going to the boxing gym with your dad? I mean, what was the first time like going inside a boxing gym? What attracted you to keep going back every day?
Well, what had happened was I was born in 68. It was like 76 or 77 when I crawled up in the attic and found this stuff, so he was long out of boxing at that point. But, the Boston City line is right not far from Medfield, and there was a gym in Rosendale. I can remember now, probably about 11 or 12 years old. My dad would take me to this boxing gym. One of his best friends owned it. And I said to Dad, that's Jimmy Ellis, the former heavyweight champion of the world from Louisville, Kentucky. He fought Ali, he fought Frazier, blah, blah, blah. So I was excited. I met the former heavyweight champion of the world, Jimmy Ellis, there one day. And now, speed up to like the year 2000, I ended up signing autographs with Jimmy Ellis at a baseball card show, autograph show down in Pennsylvania. There are so many coincidences in my life. There are no coincidences,
And you said you had 21 amateur fights. What was your amateur years like? What was it like for you?
Well, it's funny. I fought like I was so advanced so quickly that in only my 8th amateur fight, I only had 7 fights. My 8th amateur fight, I made the New England Diamond Belt Finals. And I knocked out James Johnson in the first, in 91 seconds. And he was the world's ranked #1 contender. He made it to the finals of the Olympic trials. He won the Olympic trials. And then there was another guy from Worcester who's the other #1 ranked contender by the name of Bobby Harris. Bobby Harris was a pretty good pro, too, at one point. And in my 10th amateur fight, I beat Bobby. Now, these guys had already had, 50 or 60 amateur fights. At the end of Johnson's amateur career, he had had well over 100 amateur fights. and I beat him. I knocked him out in my 7th fight, and I decision Bobby Harris in my 10th fight. So, like, I advanced quickly at an early age, and while going to college full time. But, God stepped in my life in September of 1990, and God put Vinny Vecchione in my life. And then by spring of 91, I left the Petronelli Gym in Brockton. I went with Vinny full time. Vinny became my manager and my head trainer. Cliff Fippen was my assistant trainer and owned the South Shore Boxing Club. And he was my company as well. Yes, Vinny Vecchione was an old school fight guy. He was a boxing man through and through.
In '95, he even got Manager of the Year. That was the same year you fought Mike Tyson.
Exactly. Now, another thing people don't realize is at one point I went 24-0 without a loss. But what people fail to realize is this. Vinny Vecchione was an old school fight guy. Going into the Tyson fight, I was 36-1. I had 37 fights in 44 months. Figure that out. It's a fight every 5 weeks for less than 4 years. It was insanity. It was old school. And I owe that all to Vinny Vecchione.
Looking back at that, how you said you only had 20, do you think it's important for somebody to have an extensive amateur career or a good amateur career? What do you think about that nowadays?
Well, Vinny Vecchione explained it to me, and you see it a lot. I see it a lot. Today boxing has its ebbs and flows. I hate to say it, but today boxing is ebbing. It's not flowing. But since the dawn of the Marcus of Queensberry rules, John L Sullivan, since the dawn of pro boxing, it's always had its ebbs and flows. But right now, the USA needs a heavyweight, an American heavyweight that will bring it back. It's been dominated for too long by Eastern Europeans, the Klitschko's, but boxing needs, especially the heavyweights, also maybe the middleweights, it needs an American champion to bring it back. Now, we also have the MMA has had a huge rise in this country, but and I respect any one-on-one combatant. You have to be in shape. You have to know what you're doing. But now I'm talking to you as a fan. When I watch it on TV, as soon as it goes to the mat and they start grappling, which I respect, but it's boring as a fan to watch. When they're up on their feet and they're fighting, I love it. You know what I mean? But as soon as it turns into a grappling wrestling match, I lose interest. That's just me.
And I agree with you on every point. And you know what? Right now you brought up John L. Sullivan, and just thinking about, hey, you're from Massachusetts. He was a Boston Strong Boy. So, that was his nickname. So, and that's pretty awesome. I didn't think of that until you brought that up right now.
Well, it's also another coincidence. My father was related to John L. Sullivan by marriage. Not by blood, but our families were intertwined by marriage, which is kind of another bizarre coincidence. But
wow, no way.
It's a small world, but I wouldn't want to paint it.
And well, what about your nickname there, the Hurricane? How did you get that? Where did that happen?
I will tell you that story. I told that story on the David Letterman show. My pro debut was August 23rd, 1991, outdoors at Boston University on Nickerson Field, where they played football for BU. And then Boston got hit by Hurricane Bob on August 19th. I never had a nickname, so I came up with it myself, Hurricane Peter McNeeley. I was self-proclaimed. And they tried to change it. They tried to keep calling me Irish Peter McNeeley. And I wore Kelly green trunks, and my last name is McNeeley. I think that's pretty Irish enough. It was overstating the obvious. So I kept at it. I kept with Hurricane.
It's an awesome thing you brought up your pro debut. What was it like the first day that you were going to make your pro debut? I mean, before you went through the drapes for that first time, what was it like for you? Were you nervous? Were you scared? Were you?
It was crazy. But It was crazy, but it was a great time in my life and a very extremely exciting. I had friends from Medfield there, like you would have believed, friends from Boston, friends from college, from Bridgewater State College. It was a very exciting time in my life. And I knocked out Van Dorsey in 50 seconds of the first round. My best punch was the left hook. And I hit that poor guy with a left hook. He was down on the canvas he was out for a few minutes. And God bless him.
How did that fight make you feel? Did that excite you to go on to your pro career with the big bang? How did that motivate you for the future?
Well, like Vinny McNeeley said after the fight on the TV interview with me and him and my dad together, local Boston TV, Vinny says, we're going to have a lot of knockouts. And sure enough, I did. Today my record stands as this: 47 wins, 7 losses, 36 KOs. But of the 36 KOs, I had 25 first-round knockouts. And I always joke with people, I say, we like to go home early, the pay is the same.
You rack up all these wins, like you're saying. You fought a lot in Massachusetts and Kentucky and, Vegas. And when you got that news that you were going to fight the big fight, on a pay-per-view fight against a guy like Mike Tyson, where were you at when you got that news that you were going to fight Mike Tyson?
It was strange because I'd already signed with Don King. I was already under contract by Don King to a promotional contract. I signed up with King in June of '94. So that was when, in June of '94, my name hit the big time. Back then, the big three was King, Arum, and the Duvas. And the Duvas are their main events. And if you wanted to get beyond the local level, then you had to, if you were good enough, you had to sign up with one of the big three to make any money. And Vinny came at me. We had a huge connection with Don King, an old fight guy that taught Vinny a lot. There's a guy by the name of Al Braverman. Al Braverman taught Don King the business.
He was Don King's one of his guys back in the day.
Al Braverman was involved in my father's career back in the 60s. It's a small world, but I wouldn't want to paint it. Then in the late 60s, early 70s, my dad was done. And Vinny McNeeley came on. Vinny McNeeley got hooked up with Al Braverman. And Vinny did Al a huge favor in the early 70s, and Al never forgot it. So then Vinny dropped out of boxing, went full-time into organized crime, the mob. And then heavyweight fighter, New England heavyweight champ Paul Poirier decided to make a comeback in 1990. He went looking for his old manager trainer, Vinny McNeeley. And that was when they came and they found me to spar with Paul. And then Vinny, my record got big enough. In that time, in the 70s, Al Braverman became Don King's #1 agent. So Vinny called in his favor to Al, and Al said to Vinny, I know you know what you're doing. When you think McNeely's ready, you let me know and we'll sign him up. That was how it happened.
What were your feelings like to hear that news? I mean, to get this big fight.
At that point, Vinny said, Pete will sign with King. And I said to Vinny, I said, Vinny, I know that he's the best of the big three because he pays the most of the big three. You get with Don King, you sign a contract with Don King, it means money. He paid the most of that big three. But Don had a reputation. Vinny said to me, Peter, the word is, I'm told, if you sign a contract with King, he abides by it. So we signed right up with him. And Don King treated me great. I love Don King. I had 3 fights with Don King. He paid me every nickel and then some. He treated me awesome. I love Don King.
And in training for that fight, did you expect to have a rusty Mike Tyson because he had been in jail for so long, like he was inactive? Did you expect him to raise hell because, he was going to come out pissed as hell to, take it out on his first opponent. What did you expect to fight that night? What Mike Tyson were you expecting to fight that night?
Well, I said it from the day we signed the contract. I said, I'm going right at him. Meaning, I wanted to push him, force him, thinking that he might have been off of his game, being out of the game for that long. So I wanted to test him, maybe he was going to be rusty Mike. Not Iron Mike, maybe he was going to be a rusty Mike, And I wanted to push him to the limit to, see if I could get, it was a lottery ticket for me. It was a lottery ticket. It was, like Don King said, if Peter McNeeley beats Mike Tyson, he will get $10 million in his next fight. So I took my shot, and Mike Tyson was just short and simple. He was a better fighter than me. I said to him when the fight was over, I said, you will be champion again. And I hate it when I'm right. He won all 3 times again. What got me was his speed. His speed was blinding. Blinding fast.
Before the fight even happened, at the press conferences, you didn't freeze up. How did you feel going up there in front of the media? You seemed very comfortable.
I've always been a confident kid. I'm not cocky, I'm confident. And I paid everybody respect, the respect they deserve until they cross the line. And when me and Mike Tyson signed the contract and met in the middle of the stage, he looked me right in the eye and he said, good luck. He shook my hand. You know what? I respected that. Because a lot of times with the black guys, it's, they'll shove you and go, I'm going to knock you out, white boy. Mike Tyson's a great guy. We've become friends. He's contacted me a couple times over the last 19 years. We hooked up in Boston one time. By complete coincidence, he came to Boston in 1998, and he wound up with my old limousine driver. And this limo driver, we had a mutual friend. The 3 of us were real tight. And next thing I knew, in late September 98, I was sitting in a hotel room with Mike in Boston. He's a great guy. And then in '07, Mike ran into a friend of mine in L.A. And Tyson asked him for my phone number. And then the kid gave my number to Tyson. And me and Mike talked for 3 months. And I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you something right now. This is huge. We talked for 3 months. It did not matter if I called him or he called me. The first words I was out every time were, Peter, how's your father? That's respect because of the Customato thing. Because my father fought 2 of Customato's fighters, 2 of Customato's world champions, Floyd Patterson and Jose Torres.
Mike is a big fight fan. He's a historian himself.
He's huge. He respected my dad. Now we speed up to today. Mike has talked about me in press, in papers, and radio interviews, and he always says good things about me. You know what? He's a great guy. I love the guy. God bless him. I'm glad he's doing great today. Because when Mike Tyson's doing good, it's good for me. Because our names are attached, henceforth.
You're right about that, man. You guys' names are attached. And, as a side note, man, the reason why I watch boxing today, the first fight card I ever watched was Mike Tyson, Peter McNeeley. Come on! I'm so intrigued by having you on here, man. I mean, that was
How old are you?
I'm 40 years old, man, but that was the first whole fight card that I watched, and that's what got me into boxing. Before that, I didn't really pay attention to boxing unless it was a big fight.
Well, now it's my turn to interview you.
Yeah. That was 20 years ago. Hey, Peter, that was 20 years ago.
Where did you watch the Tyson McNeeley fight?
I remember everything. That was 3 months before I turned 21. So I remember getting drunk for the first time there, watching your fight. So trust me, my friend. I remember you.
Where were you? Where were you watching?
It was your fault. So
I'm going to tell you something right now about the Tyson fight. They tried to play up the black-white thing. And I immediately squashed it after he signed the contract. And I squashed it. I said, look, It doesn't matter whether you're black, white, or purple. When the bell rings, that guy's going to try and kill you. And I said to the guy, I goes, look, when I was 7 years old and I dreamed of fighting the big fight, I didn't know the value of $1, and I didn't understand the difference between black and white. But here we are today. My daughter will be 7 in November, and she's half and half. She's biracial.
She's very beautiful. You posted a picture of her the other day, and I saw it, and I was like, "Wow, that's."
She was just a little baby there.
Yeah.
She'll be 7 in November. She's way better looking out.
Going back to the Mike Tyson fight, Peter, what was it like in the locker room that night before the fight? You know, when you guys were out there getting ready, and your dad was back there with you. You know, what was it like? What were your feelings like in that right before you guys went out through the drapes?
I had 3 friends from college that I'd known since 1986. Between freshman and sophomore year of college, I started boxing. So now my sophomore year starts. First day of school, they says, "Come on, we'll go to the kegs in the woods. Come on, Pete." All right. So they, "Pete, come on, have a beer." I said, "No, I'm not having a beer." "Why not?" I says, "Well, you guys know I've always wanted to be a boxer. I had my first fight this past summer, and I lost. I'm not drinking a beer until I win a fight." And I said, I will make it to the big fight someday." And I said, "If you 3 assholes are going to walk me in the ring," they were laughing at me like I was full of baloney. Well, 8 years later, those same 3 guys walked me in the ring against Mike Tyson. I'm a man of my word.
But were you nervous, like back there? What were your thoughts at that moment?
I was very relaxed because I was a professional. You learn, you get to the arena early to do all the BS with licensing and seeing the doctor and dealing with the commission. So and we used to joke because I was a heavyweight. It's the late show. The heavyweight's always going last. So but I was very relaxed. And my friends brag about it to this day. He was relaxed as heck. He took a nap that day in the hotel. I was very relaxed, but that's part of being a professional.
And I remember they interviewed you. I think it was Jim Gray that interviewed you back there before the fight. Your dad was back there. He had a picture of his fight with Floyd Patterson. You know, you were throwing up Medfield. You said that the fight was for a guy named Stubby or something like that.
Yeah, that was my little brother.
Yeah. You seemed pretty relaxed at that point, and people were thinking that you were going to go in there and be like the matador against this bull that was coming out of jail. You know, is that what you felt kind of going into this fight?
He was the matador because I went right at him.
What did you feel like in the entrance with your music and everything? I remember you had a song coming out, and you know what did you feel like?
I kept that a local thing too. The song was 2 guys that grew up 2 houses away from me. That was my fight song. I put them on the map. 2 guys that grew up 2 houses away from me. It was their band.
After you're in there, you see him coming out. I mean, I was scared of him, his entrance coming out, the way he looked, his music, and the whole thing. I mean, I was like right in the backyard thinking. I was back there. I was running for the hills myself. You know, what did you think, knowing that you're going to be fighting him, and what was it like for you? I mean, did you start getting nerves at that time?
I had an STD. I was scared to death. But that's, just like, it's the story of the hero and the coward. It's what the hero does that makes him a hero. It's what the coward does to do that makes him a coward. And I went right at him. I could always say it. I'm the only one that attacked Mike Tyson in his prime. But I will freely admit, I do not have the same skills or pedigree that Mike Tyson had.
So when they were reading when they were telling you the instructions, the referee before the fight, you were pretty scared out of your wits.
Well, I may not have looked it, but I was. But I was scared before every fight. If I wasn't scared, then I shouldn't have been there.
The bell rings for that first round, and you come out storming. You start swinging at him. He hits you. You fall. You get right back up. Was it just a flash knockdown? Were you hurt at the time?
Well, I'm going to tell you what. You can see it. I have a film. I have a DVD of the Tyson fight that I got from Don King of all the close-up angles. In that film, you can see the last words I said to Vinny McNeeley as he was about to get out of the ring, the bell was going to ring. I said, Vinny, F it, I'm going right at him. Now, you know what I'm saying, because I didn't want to swear on your show.
No, you can go ahead and swear. It's called the Boxing Bar.
All right, I said, fuck it, I'm going right at him, baby. And you can see me say it. You can read my lips. So, but then when I did go down, yes, I was way off balance. But Mike caught me with the right hand. His speed was just, he was the fastest I ever saw. Now, the weigh-in, I was 224. He was 220. The weigh-in is the day before the fight. So then by the time, an hour before the fight, they re-weighed us. Me and Tyson both lost 4 pounds of nervous energy. I was 220. He was 216. Mike Tyson at 216 is all speed.
But you know what? Even at getting up, Peter, you got right back up. And, I mean, you didn't freeze up. You kept backing him up. You kept him on the defensive.
I was off balance. I bounced right back up. The Bills lady hadn't even started a count. But I went right back at him again. Now, the second time he got me was with his best punch, his career punch, the right uppercut, point blank on the chin. Now, when you go down on your face, you can't even get your hands up to stop your face from hitting the canvas. Something is wrong, When I did get up, I was up at like the count of 4, but my pupils were dilated as shit, which means you got a concussion. People are mad that Vinny jumped in and stopped it.
Do you blame Vinny for stopping it, or do you see him watching out for you?
I don't today. I do not.
Because he was watching out for you. He was making sure that you were going to be okay.
At the time, I was pissed. But when I saw the replays, I knew why he did what he did. Now, I don't remember this because I had a concussion. I got knocked down in my own corner. So Vinny was like a foot away from me, looking into my eyes, as I was getting up. And he said, that was what he knew. He said,
so it was just an instinct thing that got you up then?
Both of us, it was an instinct. He instinctively said, that's it for me. And I instinctively got up and said, I'm going to go at him a third time. But he did what he did. We can't cry over spilt milk 19 years later.
He was out watching over your health. He knows you better than anybody else being your trainer. So he was just trying to stop it and make sure, that you weren't hurt.
Let's get something straight right now. When you're hurt, Mike Tyson's like a shark in blood-infested waters. That's when he's at his best. When you're hurt, he's going to fuck you up. Bottom line.
That's right. And a lot of people were pissed because they were like, what the hell did we just see and this and that? But at the same time, it was your trainer watching over you, so he was doing his job.
All right, let's take it a step further. If Vinny didn't do it so controversially, we would have got those 2 commercials that went nationwide for America Online and Pizza Hut. So we made another $380,000. Right? So God bless Vinny. Vinny stopping it like that made us more money. And Peter, my former girlfriend, was out there, Diane, and she was out there, trying to get a career modeling and acting, and she was gorgeous, and she was a great person. And, when I had my little stint in Hollywood, I hung out with her for weeks and months out there. It was awesome. I had a great time out there. Awesome time. Like the little kid from Medfield. I was like Forrest Gump, you know what I mean? A little kid from Medfield out in Hollywood now,
And that's true. That was my next question. Is that you seem to get a lot of attention after that fight, and you got this popularity. What did you think of that popularity that you were getting from even a loss? I mean, people would have thought, hey, somebody got knocked out in the first round. Forget that person. But you seem to come up after that.
You gotta hear this story. Diane was an African American female, gorgeous black woman. She took me to these illegal after-hours clubs in South Central LA. I was in this all black. I was the only white guy out of like 500 people in this illegal after-hours club. I was hanging out with the Bloods. It was crazy. I was hanging out with Ike Turner. Ike Turner ended up taking us out to dinner a couple nights later. Forrest Gump, Peter McNeeley went to Hollywood. You know, it was crazy. I was hanging out with Kiefer Sutherland one night for about 4 or 5 hours. Great guy. It was just, I'll never see the things that I saw the year before that fight, the year after that fight. I'll never see the things that I saw again.
And having all that fun, did that kind of contribute to any like problems that happened down the line with you?
Hell yes. Heck yes. That fight was the biggest number one pay-per-view of all time. I had all kinds of idiots coming at me in Boston and trying to make a buck off of my name. It was crazy. You know.
You know what pisses me off a lot, Peter, is that, like what you're saying, you know, you become popular, and all of a sudden you realize that friends aren't friends, and there's a lot of leeches and shit like that. You know, did you see a lot of that?
Well, I'll tell you. Figure out the money. You know, the money was under my control for about, say, 15 months. And, it's no big secret. I had my alcohol and drug problems back then. My thing was, I train hard, I fight hard, I'm going to play hard. You know, and I did. But my mother seized my money, say, 15 months after the fight. She seized my money. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. But then all of a sudden, I looked behind me at the cast of characters behind me, the fake friends, and I went, hey, where did everybody go? But bottom line is this. It don't make us the person we are. It doesn't make us the person that we aren't. We're still the same person. Me, myself, today in life is simple. My mom released the money. I bought this 2-bedroom condo 10 years ago. My life is extremely, very low-key now. It's simple. I don't run around in Boston like I used to. At all. Doing time, like I was always in Boston drinking and doing coke and hanging in bars back in the 90s. Today, when I go to Boston, it's for one thing only, to hang with my 6-year-old daughter, who's the greatest thing of my life. And I pay my monthly bills with the rent off the other room. And I pay my child support with an investment. Doesn't leave much money left for Peter McNeeley. But you know what? Somebody said to me once, Peter, less is more. Like when I was young, I wanted the money. I wanted the fast cars. I wanted the women. I wanted fame. But today, things are way better. Well, less is more. As long as I got a couple of cigarettes, food in the fridge, and gas in my car, and I see my daughter every other weekend, life is great. I do many, countless charitable appearances to help others. I'm doing one tomorrow night in Braintree, Mass. I've been on a charity celebrity tour this past summer. They took me to Canada. They took me to Fox was there for an overnight golf tournament every July, August. I've been on a charity celebrity tour for like the last 4 years, but in the last, say, 8 or 9 months, it's reached huge proportions. I never turned one down to help another. And take a step further. I met my daughter's mother doing a charity event 12 years ago. So doing that charity event brought me the greatest thing of my life, my daughter. What goes around comes around.
God bless you, and God blessings are right there, man. And I'm glad.
You do good things.
Exactly.
You do good things, and God is good to you.
It'll come back to you, correct. And in 1999, you know, like we talked about, that you fought Butterbean Eric Esch, and you had another big fight, another big opportunity there. What did you think of that fight?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. You know, at that fight, I had gone to Jamaica in late March, early April on that one. I was with Diane. Diane had some Jamaican in there. The woman who was in Hollywood with me, but she was from Boston. I took her to Jamaica. And I jumped into a dirty pool in Jamaica, and I got conjunctivitis in my eyes. And Vinny, I was talking to Vinny every day from Jamaica. He said, Peter, we got the Butterbean fight. I said, great. By the time I got home from Jamaica, the conjunctivitis passed from my eye into my ear. I had an earache or an ear infection since I was a little kid. It was horror. But I came out of it. I trained my butt off. See, what people don't understand is your body has to acclimate to jet lag, elevation, temperature. See, the Tyson fight, I was already living in Vegas for almost a month before the fight, so I was my mind and my body were acclimated to everything. It was the best shape I was ever in my life. And then the Butterbean fight, they flew us out there like a week before the fight, so you're working on jet lag there. Then the next morning they flew us to LA for another press conference. So now you're working on 2 days of jet lag, no training. In Vegas, they pump oxygen into the casinos to keep you awake, to keep you gambling. So I was in great shape when I got to Vegas, but the next 4 or 5 days, I didn't sleep awake because I was so excited about the fight. And the time zone difference is different, and the oxygen coming in the room to keep you awake, to keep you gambling. I didn't sleep awake. So when I got in the ring, I was junk. But you know what? Hey, cry over spilled milk. Wah! Take me to McDonald's. Give me a Whataburger and some French fries.
And just a few fights up after that, you fight Henry Akwandi. You know, that was a big fight.
Well, now, by that time, we're at the end of my career now.
Right.
Now we're taking fights on short notice. Have gloves, we'll travel. I took 4 of my last 7 fights on 8 days' notice. 2 of them out of the country on 8 days' notice. I fought Brian Nielsen in Copenhagen on 8 days' notice.
And that was a fight before Butterbean.
Yep, and the Akwandi fight was on 8 days' notice in Tallahassee. I was sick as a dog. So, like a week before the fight, 6 days before the fight, a local reporter got a hold of me. He says, Peter, what's the matter? You don't sound good. I says, yeah, we got hit by a late winter blizzard. It was like March. The fight was March 18th. We got hit by a snow and ice storm in Medfield on March like that. And my mom was in Florida, and me and my little brother Snubby are in the house, the big house in Medfield we grew up in. Some ice went on a branch in our yard, and a ton of ice. And it broke the branch off. The branch landed on the wires to go into the house to control the heat and the electricity. So we couldn't get... So my little brother was going to school at that time to be an electrician. His name was Snubby, but it was going to change to Sparky. Get it? So Snubby hooked up, the wire was broke from the branch. Snubby hooked up jumper cables to the wire. And he got a low flow of electricity back in the house so that we could turn on like the TV, the radio, the lights. But the flow was not strong enough to kick the furnace back on. So I put on double socks, I put on a hat, I put on a sweatshirt, and I went to bed. Next morning I woke up, I was sick as a dog. And the reporter calls and says, Peter, I hear you got the Akwandi fight. And he says, hey, you don't sound so good. Are you sick? I said, yeah. He says, then why are you fighting? I says, hey, I'm at the end of my career. These shots are coming too far and few in between. I got to take it when I can get it. And I went right at Henry Akwandi. And I tried as I might. The guy was 6'7", 250 pounds. Now I'm 6'2", 220 at that time. I got a long reach. Mine's 74. His reach was 86. I think he hit me from the dressing room.
And when did you realize that it's time to retire, man, that it was time to pack it up and say, hey, you know what, that's it, man?
And I will say this. Mike Tyson was the fastest I ever saw, but Henry Akwandi hit me the hardest. So my next fight, now I was pissed. I lost to Akwandi. I trained my butt off. So now it's spring, early summer. I'm training my butt off now. I was training twice a day, 5 days a week. And every sixth day for 10 weeks, once a week, I would do a mini triathlon. I would bike 16 miles, run 3 miles, and then box. I was alcohol and drug free for well over almost 2 years. I was in the best shape of my life. And we got our last fight in Cape Town, South Africa on 8 days' notice. I went to the motherland. I went to Nelson Mandela's town. You know, and we took our 8 days notice. I was awake traveling for 54 hours to get there. Talk about acclimating. When I got there, it was so far. When I got there, it was so far away. Here it was summer. There it was winter. That's how far away it was. And I fought the WBF boxing champion. He was also the world kickboxing champion, Mike Bernardo. And you could just see when I got in the ring, my timing was shot. Like my reflexes were shot. I know myself better. The only one that knows me better than myself was Vinny Vecchione. Well, then I'm the next one in line, you know? And I could just see watching film. My timing, my everything was shot from that marathon trip. And the guy freaking knocked me down. And I was out. I was out cold. And I have no idea to this day. And I believe this. It was because I was clean and sober. It was because I trained so hard. But I beat the count. I got up at the count of 9. You figure what the referee was counting. 1, 2, 3. Figure till his count of 4. I was out cold. Something inside woke me up. It got me up. And I beat the count of 9. And it's on a sad note. I didn't know it. A friend of mine alerted me afterwards. He said, Mike Bernardo killed himself, committed suicide. So, to Mike Bernardo and family, God bless. Because Mike, we talked after the fight. He was a good guy. He was very respectful. Him and his people were very respectful to me. And the people in Cape Town took me in like the people in Medfield. It was crazy. It was awesome. I loved it. I had a great time down there.
I'm a big documentary buff, and I saw you on that special with Chris Farley. You know, you were talking about
the true Hollywood story.
Yeah, and they interviewed you on that about knowing Chris Farley, and you know, how did you meet him? Was this through the popularity of boxing, or how did you meet him?
I don't really want to go publicly into how I met him, but actually we were friends for 13 months. We never partied together. We never used alcohol or drugs together, but I was with him for a month. You know, I spent Thanksgiving with him in '96, and what a great guy! It was truly a gift to be put in his life. And my father got to know him a little bit, and my mother got to know him a little bit, and what a great guy! You know, it was 24/7 Saturday Night Live with him. I mean, he was a riot. I was a Catholic schoolboy, went to church every Sunday. Just a great, great guy. But he died a year to the date that we left each other. 13 months later, he was dead. To the date that we left each other. I was on my way to Whitman for my comeback fight, and I got the word that he had died. And it was truly, truly a shock. Truly, truly a shock. A great, great guy.
Another shock, in the middle of 2009, your trainer, Vinny Vecchione, died also. How did you take that?
It killed me. But, you know, me and Vinny remained loyal to each other. We were together for 19 years. And then 2 years later, my father died. So you're talking like the two biggest male figures in my life were gone, but you know what? I got no place else to go but be grateful. I'm grateful for all that they taught me. Just, you know, you got no place else to be but grateful. Young people these days, I'm sure you can relate, young people these days do not have any gratitude for what they have in life, what they had in life. Well, that's what taught me about gratitude. God wants you to be grateful for what you have in life, what you had in life. Hindsight is 20/20. I'll tell you what, I got a crucifix mounted on my wall in my house here. I got a beautiful painting of Mary, baby Jesus and Mary on my shelf here. And I can't tell you how many times I've knelt down to that crucifix on my wall and said, "Hey, Dad, can you talk to the big guy and help me out, please? Say, God, look out for Vinny, my grandmother, and my father."
And God bless them, knowing that they were your two biggest inspirations. What would Peter McNeeley be without boxing? If it wasn't for boxing, where do you think you would have ended up?
Well, I'll tell you what. Number one, if it wasn't my father, I never would have been a fighter. But if it wasn't for Vinny McNeeley, his masterful grasp of being a fight guy, he was a promoter, a manager, a trainer, a fight guy. If it wasn't him, we wouldn't even be having this interview right now. How do you like them apples? Bottom line, I'm a realist. If it wasn't for Vinny McNeeley, I would have been a real casualty of the fight game.
Having said that, do you regret your boxing life?
Hell no. I dreamed of this in 07, and I achieved some things, and I'm here today to talk about it with you. So why should I be upset about it? I'm happy. I made a new friend. You.
That's correct, Peter, and God bless you. For people wondering what you do today, or if you're still involved in the sport, are you still involved with boxing today? What's Peter McNeeley up to?
This is what I do. I actually taught boxing as a job for Boston sports clubs, the Gold Gym, and but I did that about 5 years. But then being a third generation professional boxer, and seeing Vinny McNeeley, Cliff Pippen, how they operate in the gym and multiple pros and amateurs, I said, you know what? If you're working for the man with boxing, you're working for them corporations I work for, you're putting your heart out into it, you're making very little money. Which, don't get me wrong, I loved working for Gold Gym, Boston sports clubs. I loved it. I made friends. But, it was yuppie boxing. People were doing it for the exercise, the sport. But I had a great time doing it. When I teach boxing, it comes from the heart. But you realize, you got to own your own gym. And then when you own your own gym, it's a 24/7 job. The fighters become your family. I watched Vinny McNeeley and Cliff Pippen do it. I watched it. We as the fighters, they were our parents. They were our brothers. They were our counselors. They were our girlfriend marriage counselors. They were drug and alcohol counselors. They were locker room lawyers. It goes on and on. But I'm not saying that I wouldn't ever do it again in the future. I've had a few people come out and say, "Hey, let's open a gym." And I've not declined. It just hasn't really happened yet. But today, I still teach a little bit. I got a couple of young bucks here in Norwood and Walpole. We'll put the gloves on right on the grass at the school, on the football field. We'll put the gloves on and I'll teach them. I do that every once in a while. But today it's about my daughter, and today it's about a few of my close friends, and it's really about I'm doing so many appearances for charitable organizations. I never turn one down to help another. I'm doing another one tomorrow night, but then Sunday morning at 11 a.m. on Route 140 in Mansfield, Massachusetts, I'm signing autographs at an autograph baseball card show with the former heavyweight champion of the world, Riddick Big Daddy Bo, and local legend and former world champion Tony DeMarco, who was a great, great friend of my dad's. My dad's last night out in Boston. My dad was a Boston guy. my dad's last night out in Boston, like a week before he died, was with Tony DeMarco, former state honor and former middleweight contender Joe DiNucci, and Dick Torsby for fighting. Dad's last night out in Boston. He was with the fighters. And I know that that's how he wanted to go out. And Dad passed on October 25th. And we buried him on Halloween 3 years ago. And my dad, we buried him on Halloween. And my mom said to me, Peter, he's looking down every Halloween. He goes, boo!
And I could tell you miss your dad a lot. What do you think of boxing fans personally? You know, these people that come out to watch you or to get autographs from you. You know, what do you think of these boxing fans? You know, how do you see them personally?
My best friend today, he's like a brother to me. He's like a brother from another mother. He's from the Albany area, New York. He comes down here every other weekend. I met him at one of my fights back in August of 1996. And he'll be here tonight. So that should speak for itself.
So much research has been done on the after effects on athletes that are in contact sports like boxing, like football, you know, all these contact sports, even wrestling. But do you ever feel the aches and pains of the injuries that you might have sustained from boxing? Do you ever feel that today?
I sure am. My elbows are junk. Today. I got tennis. I got extreme tennis elbow in both elbows. You can hear my speech. Yes, I do have collateral damage from 54 pro fights, 21 amateur fights. But you know what? If you took as many punches as I did, you'd be lucky if you were talking as good as I am. And I got a memory like a steel trap. I'm looking at my college diploma as the president of the college gave it to me. I'm looking behind me right now. And that's what I'm most proud of. And I always tell my daughter, Nadia, if your daddy could be the first one to fight Mike Tyson when he got out of prison, you can do anything you want, Nadia. My daughter is just like Obama. She's half white and half black. She can do anything. Why couldn't she be president of the United States someday? And that's what I tell her. Do whatever you want, Nadia. Your father did, so can you.
I know you're going to be around for about 100 years or more. When all said and done, Peter, you know, how does Peter McNeeley want to be remembered?
Simple. Loyalty, honor, and respect.
Like I said, the first time I remember you was from that night, and now I'm still a boxing fan because of that fight with you and Mike Tyson, and I appreciate that very much. I appreciate you for your performance, and thank you very much for that. Amigo, thank you very much for coming on to TheBoxingBar.com, and thank you very much for just being yourself.
Thank you very much, my friend.